He was just a child, a hungry child who had just woken from a nap. He looked up into the morning sky and saw a beautiful, glowing, perfectly ripe fruit, a giant mango calling to him. He wanted it. And so, with the innocent, unstoppable desire of a toddler, he leaped into the air to get it. The only problem? That glowing fruit was the sun, 93 million miles away, and he almost ate it. In a single earth-shattering leap, the child soared through the atmosphere, his divine power propelling him across the void of space. The heavens themselves were thrown into chaos. The planets shuddered in their orbits. The gods watched in pure terror as this cosmic toddler, driven by simple hunger, was about to swallow the source of all life in the solar system. This single act of celestial mischief would trigger a war among the gods, lead to the child's own death, and result in a curse so profound it would shape the destiny of the world. He would be granted powers beyond imagination, only to have the memory of them ripped from his mind, forcing him to live as a shadow of his true self. How could a mere child possess such terrifying power? And more importantly, why would the gods conspire to make him forget it? The answer to that question reveals the story of the greatest hero you've never heard of. A story of devotion so absolute it could command the gods themselves. Our story begins not with a bang, but with a prayer. Deep in the forests of ancient India lived a woman named Anjana. She was an apsara, a celestial spirit, but due to a minor curse, she was born on Earth in the form of a Vanera, a race of intelligent, forest-dwelling, monkey-like humanoids. Anjana and her husband Kesri, a powerful Vanera chieftain, were righteous and brave, but they longed for one thing they did not have: a son who would be invincible, immortal, and possess unparalleled strength and wisdom. For 12 long years, Anjana performed intense spiritual austerities. She prayed, she fasted, she stood on one leg, her devotion a silent, burning beacon aimed at the heavens. She directed her prayers to Shiva, the destroyer and transformer, one of the most powerful deities in the cosmos. Finally, the god was moved by her unwavering faith. He granted her a boon. She would have the son she desired, an incarnation of his own divine power. But the delivery of this divine gift would be unconventional. It would rely on the wind. At the same time, hundreds of miles away, a great king was performing a sacred ritual to have children of his own. At the culmination of the ceremony, a divine being emerged from the sacrificial fire, holding a bowl of sacred rice pudding, a blessed food that would grant sons to the king's wives. As the king distributed the pudding, a kite, a bird of prey, swooped down, snatched a fragment of the pudding, and flew away. This was no accident. This was the work of Vayu, the god of the wind. Guided by Shiva's command, Vayu directed the kite across the country, straight to the forest where Anjana was deep in meditation. As she stood with her hands open in prayer, the kite dropped the divine morsel of pudding directly into her palms. Believing it to be a gift from the gods, a prasad, she consumed it. In that moment, the divine energy of Shiva, carried by the wind god Vayu, entered Anjana. The boon was delivered. She would not just give birth to a son of a Vanera chief, she would give birth to the son of the wind god himself. He would be known as Pavanputra, the son of the wind, and he would be called Hanuman. From the moment of his birth, it was clear Hanuman was no ordinary child. He was born with divine earrings and a sacred thread across his chest, marks of his celestial heritage. He glowed with a reddish-orange hue, as bright as the morning sun. He didn't cry, he laughed, a sound that echoed with cosmic power. He was filled with a boundless, restless energy. He was a divine being stuffed into the body of an infant, and he had no idea how to control the immense force bubbling inside him. Which brings us back to that fateful morning. The hungry child, the distant sun. When Hanuman leaped, he wasn't just flying. He was moving with the speed of wind and thought combined. He was a golden streak of light, closing the 93 million mile gap in an instant. The sun god Surya saw him coming and was understandably alarmed, but he recognized the child's divinity and, not wanting to harm him, simply let him approach. But there was another celestial body near the sun that day. Rahu, a demonic entity whose eternal destiny is to periodically try and swallow the sun, causing eclipses. When Rahu saw Hanuman rocketing towards the sun, he thought this new being was trying to take his job. He fled in terror to the court of Indra, the king of the gods and the ruler of the heavens. Rahu burst into the celestial court, screaming that a new, more powerful demon had come to devour the sun permanently. Indra, a warrior god known for his quick temper and even quicker thunderbolt, didn't waste time asking questions. He mounted his great white elephant, Airavata, and flew out to meet this new threat. What he found was a child, his mouth wide open, about to swallow the sun whole. Indra, seeing only a threat to the cosmic order, did the unthinkable. He raised his ultimate weapon, the Vajra, a thunderbolt forged from the bones of a sage, so powerful it could shatter mountains and boil oceans. And he hurled it at the child. The Vajra struck Hanuman on the jaw with unimaginable force. The child's flight was instantly arrested. He was thrown from his trajectory, his body plummeting back through the void, across the sky, and down to the earth below. He landed broken and still. The divine child was dead. His father Vayu, the wind god, saw it all. He saw Indra strike his son. He saw his child fall from the heavens. A grief and a rage so immense filled him that it shook the foundations of the universe. In his sorrow, he did the only thing he could. He withdrew. He gathered his son's lifeless body in his arms and retreated to a cave, and with him, he took all the air in the world. Suddenly, all life began to suffocate. On earth, humans and animals gasped for breath, their lungs burning. In the heavens, the gods themselves began to choke. The cosmos fell silent. The universe could not function without the wind, without the air. Life itself was coming to a halt. Panicked, the gods realized the catastrophic error they had made. Led by Brahma, the creator of the universe, they rushed to the cave to plead with Vayu. They found him cradling his son, tears of cosmic sorrow streaming down his face. Brahma, with his gentle creative touch, reached out and healed the child. Hanuman's breath returned. His eyes opened. He was alive. To appease Vayu and to make amends for their terrible mistake, the gods decided to bestow upon the child gifts, blessings, and powers beyond measure. Brahma went first. He granted Hanuman immunity from his most powerful weapon, the Brahmastra, and the power to change his form at will, to become as large as a mountain or as small as a thumb. Shiva granted him invincibility, a boon of long life and supreme wisdom. Indra, humbled and regretful, declared that his own Vajra would never again harm Hanuman, and gave him a body as strong as the weapon itself. The sun god, Surya, gave him 100th part of his own brilliance and promised to teach him the sacred scriptures, making him the ultimate scholar. Varuna, the god of water, promised he would never be harmed by water. Yama, the god of death, granted him immortality and freedom from the fear of death. One by one, the gods showered him with their powers, turning him into one of the most powerful beings in all of creation. He was invulnerable, immortal, a shapeshifter, a master of all knowledge, and possessed of strength that could move worlds. But this is where our story takes its tragic turn. Armed with these godlike powers and still possessing the mischievous mind of a child, Hanuman became a menace. He would use his powers to play pranks on the sages and hermits meditating in the forest. He would levitate them, douse their sacred fires, and rearrange their ceremonial items, disrupting their deep connection to the divine. At first, they were patient, knowing he was just a child. But the pranks escalated. They became destructive. The sages, whose spiritual power could rival the gods, finally had enough. They came together and placed a curse on Hanuman. It was not a curse of pain or death. It was something far more subtle and far more profound. They cursed him to forget. He would forget the boons. He would forget his strength. He would forget he could fly, that he could change his size, that he was the son of a god. He would live the life of an ordinary Vanera, completely unaware of the divine power sleeping within him. The curse had one condition. He would only be able to remember his powers when another person reminded him of them, specifically for the purpose of serving a great and noble cause. And so, the most powerful being in the universe was neutered by a simple act of forgetting. He grew up in the Kishkinda forest, a brilliant and loyal advisor to the Vanera king Sugriva. But nothing more. The memory of his flight to the sun, the blow from Indra's thunderbolt, the gifts of the gods, all of it was locked away in the deepest recesses of his mind. He was a weapon without a wielder, a dormant volcano, a divine force waiting for a spark. And that spark was about to arrive, in the form of two exiled princes, wandering the forest in search of a kidnapped queen. The world would soon need a hero, and its greatest champion had no idea it was him. These two princes were Rama and his brother, Lakshmana, heirs to the throne of Ayodhya, now living as hermits in the dense wilderness. They weren't there by choice. A cruel twist of fate, a promise made by their father, had cast them out of their kingdom and into a 14-year exile. But their hardship had recently turned into a nightmare. Rama's wife, the embodiment of grace and virtue, Sita, had been violently abducted, ripped from their humble ashram by a 10-headed demon king of immense power, Ravana. Now they wandered, hearts heavy with grief, eyes scanning every shadow, every horizon. They were driven by a singular, all-consuming purpose: to find Sita. Their journey had led them here, to the foothills of the Rishyamukha mountain, a place of strange and powerful energy. They were two men alone, against a world that had turned hostile. They had lost a kingdom, and now they had lost a queen. They had no army, no allies, and very little hope. High above them, on the peak of that same mountain, another exiled king watched their approach with growing alarm. This was Sugriva, the king of the Vanaras, a race of intelligent, powerful monkey-like beings. Like Rama, he too had lost his kingdom and his wife, betrayed and overthrown by his own brother. The impossibly strong valley, Sugriva lived in constant terror. He had taken refuge on this specific mountain because of a curse. A sage had decreed that if Valley ever set foot on Rishyamukha, his head would shatter into 1,000 pieces. It was the only safe place in the world for Sugriva. So when he saw two powerful warriors, armed with celestial bows and radiating an aura of royalty, approaching his sanctuary, his mind leaped to the worst conclusion. They had to be assassins, spies sent by his tyrannical brother to finish him off. Paranoia gripped him. He turned to his council of ministers, his voice trembling with fear. But one among them remained calm. His chief advisor, his most loyal friend, Hanuman. Sugriva, desperate, turned to him. "Go," he commanded. "Find out who they are. But be careful. Disguise yourself. Do not reveal your true form unless you are certain they are not a threat." Hanuman bowed, his mind already at work. He understood the stakes. He understood Sugriva's fear. But as he looked down at the two figures, he felt something else. Not fear, but a strange, inexplicable pull. A sense of destiny unfolding. He took a deep breath and leaped from the mountain peak. In midair he transformed. His powerful Vanara form dissolved, reshaping itself into that of a humble Brahmin, a wandering ascetic. He landed softly on the path before the two brothers, his disguise perfect. He carried a simple staff and a water pot, his face serene and scholarly. He approached them not with the swagger of a warrior, but with the gentle humility of a holy man. Rama and Lakshmana stopped, surprised to see an ascetic in this remote wilderness. Hanuman bowed his head respectfully and began to speak, and the words that came out were not the simple grunts of a monkey, but the most refined, grammatically perfect Sanskrit. His voice was like music, his sentences flawlessly constructed, his arguments logical and persuasive. "O noble warriors," he began, "you who shine with the brilliance of gods, yet bear the marks of hardship. Your presence graces this dark forest like the sun and moon. May I be so bold as to ask who you are, and what purpose brings you to this unforgiving land?" He spoke with such eloquence, such profound intelligence, that Rama was momentarily stunned into silence. He turned to his brother Lakshmana, a look of sheer admiration on his face. "Brother," he whispered, "did you hear him? The way he speaks. No one could utter such flawless words without having mastered all the sacred Vedas and their branches. There is not a single grammatical error, not a single misplaced accent. This is no ordinary ascetic. Mark my words, any king who has such a messenger is destined for success." Hanuman, despite his disguise, felt a jolt run through his entire being. He had come to assess them, but he was the one being seen, truly seen. He looked into Rama's eyes and saw not a weary, exiled prince, but an ocean of compassion. He saw a depth of character, a divine light that seemed to emanate from his very soul. In that instant, Hanuman knew. The curse that had shackled his memory, that had buried his power, began to crack. He wasn't just looking at a man. He was looking at his purpose. He fell to his knees. The illusion of the old ascetic melted away like snow in the sun, and there in its place stood Hanuman in his true magnificent Vanara form. His hands were folded, his head bowed, and tears streamed from his eyes. Tears of recognition, tears of a reunion that had spanned lifetimes. "My lord," he choked out, his voice thick with an emotion he hadn't felt in centuries. Forgive my deception. I am Hanuman, servant of Sugriva. And you are the one my soul has been waiting for. Rama smiled, a gentle, all-knowing smile. He reached down and lifted Hanuman to his feet. In that moment the bond was forged, not of a king and a subject, but of a devotee and his god. Hanuman quickly explained the situation, Sugriva's exile, his fear of Valley, and their shared predicament of having lost both kingdom and wife. He saw the parallel, the cosmic symmetry. Two exiled kings, brought together by fate in the middle of a forest. He led them up the mountain to meet Sugriva. The paranoid Monkey King was still wary, but Hanuman's conviction was absolute. He became the bridge, the ultimate diplomat, assuring Sugriva of Rama's noble character and immense power. An alliance was proposed. Rama would help Sugriva defeat the invincible Valley and reclaim his throne. In return, Sugriva would command his entire Vanera army, a force that numbered in the millions, to scour every corner of the earth to find Sita. It was a perfect pact. But Sugriva, having lived in fear for so long, still had a sliver of doubt. Valley wasn't just strong. He was a force of nature, blessed with a boon that gave him half the strength of any opponent he faced. How could this human, however noble, possibly defeat him? He voiced his skepticism not as an insult but as a genuine concern. He pointed to a row of 7 colossal sala trees, thick as ancient pillars, standing in a perfect line. My brother Valley, Sugriva explained, can shake one of these trees so hard that it sheds all its leaves. He can uproot it with his bare hands. If you are to defeat him, you must prove you are stronger. Lakshmana bristled at the challenge, but Rama simply smiled. He understood. Faith needed proof. He calmly picked up his divine bow, the Kodanda. He drew a single arrow from his quiver, a shaft that seemed to hum with latent power. He took a moment, his eyes closed as if in prayer. Then, with a motion as fluid as a river, he drew the bowstring back to his ear and released. There was no sound of a typical bowstring, but a thunderclap that echoed through the mountains. The arrow became a blur of golden light. It didn't just hit the first tree. It tore through it, sending splinters the size of spears flying into the air. It passed through the second tree, the third, the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh, without even a hint of slowing down. 7 massive ancient trees pierced through in a single impossible shot. But the arrow wasn't finished. After exiting the 7th tree, it shot into the earth, burrowing deep into the underworld, before re-emerging, clean and pristine, and flying back into Rama's quiver. Silence. Absolute stunned silence. Sugriva and the other Vanaras stared, their jaws agape. Their minds couldn't even process what they had just witnessed. This wasn't the strength of a man. This was the power of a god. All doubt vanished, replaced by pure, unadulterated awe. Sugriva fell to his knees before Rama, his heart overflowing with hope for the first time in years. The alliance was sealed not with words, but with a demonstration of divine might. The 2 exiled kings were now brothers in arms, their fates intertwined. The search for Sita was about to begin in earnest. And Hanuman, the catalyst, the one who had recognized divinity in the guise of a man, stood ready. His forgotten powers were stirring, his purpose was clear, and his journey of devotion had just begun. The great Vanera army, a force of nature unlike any the world had ever seen, was mobilized. Sugriva, now a king with a purpose, divided his legions. 4 armies for the 4 corners of the world. One was sent north, to the frozen peaks of the Himalayas and beyond. Another east to the lands where the sun first touches the earth. A third went west, across vast deserts and into the setting sun. Each was a formidable force, a testament to the power of a united people. But the true hope, the sharpest point of the spear, was the army sent south. This southern contingent was the A-Team. It was led by the young, brave, and sometimes impulsive Prince Angava, the son of the fallen valley. At his side was the ancient and wise Jambavan, the king of the bears, a being who had walked the earth since its creation, whose memory was a library of forgotten ages. And among them, walking with a quiet humility that belied the storm within, was Hanuman. Rama had given Hanuman his own signet ring, a personal token, proof that he was a divine messenger. This ring was more than just metal and stone. It was a symbol of faith, a direct connection between the devotee and his lord. Their mission was clear. Their spirits were high. They charged south, a wave of determination crashing against the subcontinent. They crossed rivers that flowed like arteries from the mountains. They navigated forests so dense that daylight was a distant memory. And they climbed hills that tested their strength and endurance. For a month they searched. Every village, every cave, every secluded ashram, every strange dwelling. They investigated them all, calling out Sita's name. But they found nothing. Not a trace, not a whisper, not a single clue to her whereabouts. The land grew harsher. The lush forest gave way to a desolate, rocky wilderness, a place seemingly forgotten by life itself. It was a desert of stone and sand, baked by a merciless sun. Their food ran out. The water they carried was gone. Thirst became a physical torment, a fire in their throats. Dehydration began to claim the weaker among them. Hope, which had burned so brightly, began to flicker and dim. Despair started to creep into the hearts of the mighty Vanaras. They were lost, starving, and on the brink of total failure. Angatha, feeling the immense weight of leadership, saw his mission and his life slipping away. It was in this moment of absolute desperation that they stumbled upon a crack in the earth, a dark, mysterious cave from which cool air seemed to flow. Strange, water-loving birds flew in and out of the entrance, their feathers still wet with condensation. It was a sign. Where there was water, there was life. With their last reserves of strength, they squeezed through the narrow entrance and descended into the darkness. What they found was not a simple cavern with a pool of water. They had stepped into another world. The darkness gave way to a soft, internal luminescence. Before them lay a breathtaking subterranean paradise. There were golden trees bearing fruit that shimmered like jewels. Rivers of pure, sweet water flowed through channels carved from crystal. They saw magnificent palaces and pavilions, built with an architecture that defied logic, gleaming with gold and precious stones. It was a place of impossible beauty, a hidden heaven beneath the scorched earth. This was the creation of Mayasura, the architect of the Asuras, a magical realm built long ago. But now it was guarded by a single occupant, a female ascetic, a yogini named Svayamprabha. She appeared before the astonished Vanaras, her form radiating a serene and powerful energy. She saw their condition, their exhaustion, their hunger, their thirst, and she offered them the bounty of her magical home. They ate the divine fruits and drank the life-giving water, and their strength returned in a rush. Svayamprabha listened to their story, of Rama's loss and their sacred quest. She was moved by their devotion. But this paradise was also a test. It offered comfort, safety, an end to their struggle. It would be so easy to stay, to forget the harsh world above and live out their days in this perfect, hidden world. But the image of Rama's grief-stricken face was burned into their minds. The memory of Sita's plight was a fire in their hearts. They thanked Svayamprabha for her kindness, but they knew they could not stay. Their dharma, their duty was outside. Impressed by their unwavering focus, Svayamprabha offered them her help. "I cannot fight your battles," she told them, "but I can give you back your path." She asked them all to close their eyes. Using her immense yogic powers, she manipulated time and space itself. In what felt like a single instant, the Vanaras felt a rush of wind and the warmth of the sun on their skin. When they opened their eyes, the magical cave was gone. They were standing on the surface once more, but the sky above them was unfamiliar. The sun was in the wrong place. A terrible realization dawned on them. While it felt like only a day inside the cave, an entire month, perhaps more, had passed in the world outside. The deadline Sugriva had set for their search mission had long since expired. They hadn't just failed to find Sita, they had failed to even report back. In the eyes of their king, they were deserters. The weight of this failure crashed down upon them. Angatha, the young prince, was utterly broken. He slumped to the ground, convinced that his uncle Sugriva, a king known for his strict justice, would have them all executed. "We cannot go back," he said, his voice thick with despair. "To return is to face certain death. It is better that we stay here and starve. Our lives are over." A wave of agreement rippled through the exhausted army. The thought of facing Sugriva's wrath was more terrifying than a slow death in the wilderness. They had come so far, endured so much, only to fail at the final hurdle. They were trapped between an impossible mission and an unforgiving king. The greatest search party ever assembled was about to give up, to simply lay down and die on the shores of the Southern Ocean. Throughout this crisis, Hanuman remained silent. He listened to Angatha's despair. He watched the other Vanaras lose their will to live. But he did not speak. He did not give in to the fear. His mind was a sea of calm in the center of the storm. His faith in Rama was an anchor that held him steady. He knew with a certainty that defied all logic that this could not be the end. Rama's work was not finished, and therefore neither was his. As the Vanaras sat in their circle of sorrow, preparing to fast unto death, a shadow fell over them. They looked up to see a creature of immense size perched on the cliff above. It was a great vulture, ancient and scarred, but he was crippled. His wings were nothing more than charred, featherless stumps. This was Sampati, the brother of the noble Jatayu, the very vulture who had given his life trying to stop Ravana's chariot. He had been drawn by the sounds of their despair, thinking he had found an easy meal. But then he overheard them speaking his brother's name, recounting Jatayu's heroic sacrifice for Lord Rama. Sampati's heart stirred. He called down to them, his voice like grinding stones. He told them his own story, how in a contest of youthful pride, he had flown too close to the sun to shield his brother, scorching his own wings to save Jatayu's life. He had been stranded on this mountain ever since. Then he gave them the one thing they had lost completely, hope. "My wings may be gone," Sampati rasped, "but my eyes are not. I have the sight of the gods. From this very peak, I saw the 10-headed demon king, Ravana, flying south across the great water. He held a crying woman who screamed Rama, Lakshmana, over and over again. He took her to his island fortress Lanka, 100 leagues across the sea. He pointed a gnarled talon towards the horizon. It is there. I can see it now. The golden city of Lanka, shining on its mountain peak." A jolt of pure energy shot through the Vanaras. The despair vanished, replaced by a surge of adrenaline and purpose. They had a location. They had a target. The search was over. They scrambled to their feet and rushed to the edge of the land, their hearts pounding in their chests. And there it was, their final and most formidable obstacle, a seemingly endless expanse of violent, churning water, the Great Southern Ocean. It stretched from one horizon to the other, a massive, unconquerable barrier of blue. They had found the path to Sita, but it was a path across an impassable sea. They stood on the precipice of the world, staring at the impossible, and a new daunting question filled the air. Who among them could possibly cross it? The silence that fell upon the Vanera army was heavier than any mountain. It was the sound of hope dying. Before them the Indian Ocean churned, a vast, mocking expanse of blue. It wasn't just water, it was a liquid wall, a definitive end to their quest. Each warrior a hero in their own right, a champion capable of shaking the very earth, now felt small, insignificant against the infinite horizon. The great bear king, Jambavan, ancient and wise, his fur the color of twilight, looked at the faces around him. He saw despair. He saw the fire of their courage being extinguished by the sheer scale of the challenge. He knew something had to be done. He turned to Angatha, the crown prince, son of the mighty valley. "Angatha," his voice rumbled like distant thunder, "you are the son of the king. You possess strength beyond measure. Tell us, how far can you leap?" Angatha stepped forward, his young face a mask of grim determination. He looked out at the churning waves, calculating, measuring his own power against the impossible. "I can leap the 100 leagues to the shores of Lanka," he declared, and a flicker of hope ignited in the crowd. But then his shoulders slumped. "I can make the journey there, but I do not know if I will have the strength to make the journey back." The flicker of hope died. A one-way trip was a death sentence. The mission wasn't just to find Sita. It was to return with the news. A murmur of disappointment rippled through the ranks. If their strongest young warrior, the prince himself, couldn't guarantee a return, who could? Jambavan nodded slowly, his ancient eyes showing no surprise. He knew the limits of flesh and bone, even the extraordinary flesh of the Vanaras. He looked around the circle of champions, his gaze passing over each one. Then, his eyes settled on one figure, sitting apart from the others. He was quiet, unassuming. While the others boasted of their strength or lamented their limits, he had said nothing. He simply sat, staring at the ocean, his expression thoughtful, almost vacant. This was Hanuman. Jambavan walked towards him, the other warriors parting to let the old king pass. He stood before the silent figure and the air grew still. Everyone watched. Hanuman. Jambavan's voice was softer now, not a command but an invocation. Why do you sit in silence? You are the son of Vayu, the wind god himself. You are equal to your father in might and speed. Why do you not speak of your own power? Hanuman looked up, his eyes holding a deep unspoken confusion. He seemed unaware of the very power Jambavan spoke of. It was as if he were hearing about someone else entirely. I am just a Vanera, he said quietly. A servant of Sugriva and Rama. I do not know of this power you speak of. A sad smile touched Jambavan's lips. He had expected this. He knelt down, so his ancient eyes were level with Hanuman's. You do not remember, he whispered, and the world seemed to lean in to listen. You have forgotten who you are. Listen to me, son of the wind. When you were just a child, your power was limitless, and your mischief was legendary. You were born with an insatiable hunger. One morning you awoke and saw the rising sun, a brilliant glowing orb in the sky. Thinking it was a ripe mango, a divine fruit, you decided you wanted to eat it. And so you leaped. With no effort at all, you launched yourself from the earth and flew towards the sun, your divine heritage making you immune to its searing heat. You flew higher and higher, a tiny golden speck against the vastness of space, on your way to swallow the source of all light in the cosmos. The gods watched in terror. Indra, the king of the heavens, saw your approach and feared you would plunge the universe into eternal darkness. To stop you, he hurled his ultimate weapon, the Vajra, the thunderbolt, and it struck you on the jaw, sending you plummeting back to earth unconscious. Your father Vayu, the wind god, was consumed by grief and rage. Seeing his divine son struck down, he withdrew all the air from the world. Life itself began to suffocate. The cosmos choked. The gods, realizing their catastrophic error, rushed to appease him. They gathered around your still form and showered you with blessings, with boons to bring you back. Brahma, the creator, decreed that no weapon could ever harm you. Indra, full of remorse, blessed you with a body stronger than his own thunderbolt, and gave you the choice to die only when you wished it. The sun god gave you a fraction of his brilliance and the mastery of all knowledge. The god of water swore you would never be harmed by it. The god of death granted you immortality and freedom from his wrath. You were made invincible, immortal, and all-powerful, a living repository of divine might. Jambavan paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. But this immense power in a child was dangerous. You continued your mischief, tormenting sages and disrupting sacred rituals, unaware of your own overwhelming strength. Finally, in an act not of punishment but of protection, for you and for the world, the great sages placed a gentle curse upon you, a cosmic amnesia. They decreed that you would forget your powers. You would live as a normal Vanera, unaware of the divine force sleeping within you, until the day someone reminded you of your true self, your true purpose. Jambavan placed a heavy paw on Hanuman's shoulder. His voice dropped to a powerful, resonant whisper that vibrated through Hanuman's very soul. Hanuman, that day is today. That purpose is now. Rama needs you. The world needs you. Remember who you are. The words were a key turning a lock that had been sealed for ages. Something shifted behind Hanuman's eyes. Flicker. A spark. Then a flood. The memories, the power, the divine boons. It all came rushing back. A tidal wave of cosmic energy breaking against the dam of his forgotten past. He closed his eyes, and a low hum began to emanate from his body. The ground beneath him started to tremble. The other Vanaras stumbled back, their eyes wide with disbelief and awe. Hanuman was growing. His form began to expand, not just in size but in presence. His muscles swelled with the power of mountains. His limbs lengthened, becoming like mighty towers. His golden fur began to glow, radiating a light as brilliant as the sun he had once tried to swallow. He grew and grew, past the height of the tallest trees, his head rising to pierce the clouds. He became a colossal figure, a mountain of living gold, his form so immense it seemed to push the sky itself higher. When he finally stopped growing, he was a being of breathtaking power, a demigod standing on the edge of the world. He opened his eyes, and they were no longer the eyes of a humble servant. They were twin suns burning with purpose, knowledge, and infinite strength. He turned his colossal head and looked down at Jambavan and the stunned army below. When he spoke, His voice was no longer a quiet murmur. It was the sound of the wind itself, a roar that shook the continent. "I remember," he boomed. "I remember it all. This ocean is but a puddle. The island of Lanka is but a stepping stone. Do not fear. I will leap across this sea. I will find Mother Sita, and I will return." With a confidence that could calm the raging seas, he strode to the very edge of the land, to the peak of the great Mount Mahendra. He planted his feet, and the mountain groaned under his divine weight. He looked across the water, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon where his destiny and his Lord's hope awaited. He took a deep, world-shaking breath, the air rushing into his lungs like a hurricane. He bent his knees, coiling the divine energy within his colossal form, and with the force of a collapsing star, he prepared to leap into history. The ground screamed. Mount Mahendra, a titan of stone and earth, groaned under the pressure, its peak fracturing as Hanuman launched himself into the void. It wasn't a jump, it was an eruption. A shockwave blasted outwards, flattening ancient trees and sending a hurricane-force wind across the land, a final thunderous farewell. He ascended not like a bird, but like a golden missile fired from the very heart of the world, a living testament to the power of unwavering purpose. He tore a gash in the fabric of the sky. The ocean below, a vast churning expanse of blue, seemed to recoil from his passage. Clouds parted before him, wisps of white vapor saluting his flight. He was a second sun, a blazing comet of devotion, his body humming with the energy of Vayu, the wind god, his father. The world below became a map, a tapestry of greens and blues, and he was the needle stitching a line of hope straight towards the island of Lanka. But the ocean was not an empty road. It was a kingdom with its own guardians, its own tests. As Hanuman blazed across the sky, a magnificent peak of shimmering gold rose from the depths directly in his path. This was Menaka, the sentient mountain, a friend to the wind god. He rose not as a barrier but as an offering. He spoke to Hanuman, his voice like the shifting of tectonic plates, offering him a place to rest. He offered him sweet fruits and cool streams, a moment of respite on his arduous journey. This was the first test, not of strength but of focus. The temptation was real. The journey was long, the destination unknown. A moment's rest seemed not just a luxury but a necessity. But Hanuman knew that to stop, even for a moment, was to break the momentum of his vow. His mission was a sacred fire, and to pause was to let it flicker. He gently touched the peak of the golden mountain with his hand, a gesture of profound respect and gratitude. He thanked Menaka for his kindness, explaining that he could not rest until Rama's work was done. His duty was his only nourishment, his devotion his only rest. With a respectful nod, he pushed off, resuming his flight, leaving the golden mountain to sink back into the sea, a silent witness to a will that could not be swayed. His journey continued, a streak of light against the endless sky. But soon a new shadow fell upon him. From the depths, another being arose, far more sinister than the gentle Menaka. It was Surasa, the mother of the Nagas, the celestial serpents. She was a colossal, terrifying figure, sent by the gods themselves to test him further. Her mouth opened wide, a cavernous maw lined with fangs like daggers. She blocked his path, declaring that ancient law dictated he must pass through her mouth to continue. This was a test of ego and wit. A lesser being would have met her challenge with brute force, a clash of titans over the open ocean. Hanuman in his expanded form was immense, but he saw the futility in a battle of pure size. He grew larger, his body swelling to match her challenge. In response, Surasa's mouth stretched wider, impossibly wide, a gaping abyss ready to swallow the sky itself. She stretched it 100 miles wide. Hanuman expanded to 200. She stretched it to 300. He expanded to 400. Just as the contest of size reached its cosmic, almost absurd peak, Hanuman did the unexpected. In an instant, he shrank his form down to the size of a thumb. The change was so fast, so complete, it was like he had vanished. Before the colossal demoness could even register the change, he zipped into her vast, cavernous mouth, flew through her gullet, and emerged out of her ear, resuming his normal size in the open sky. He had fulfilled her demand. He had passed through her. But he did it on his terms, with intelligence, not aggression. He had honored the test without being trapped by it. Surasa, stunned but impressed, smiled. She had seen his strength, But now she had seen his wisdom and his humility. She blessed his journey, recognizing that this was no ordinary being, but a force of dharma, of righteousness itself. With 2 tests passed, Hanuman flew on, his confidence soaring. But the ocean held one final horrifying secret. He suddenly felt a drag, a powerful unseen force pulling him downwards. He looked around, but the sky was empty. He tried to accelerate, to pour more power into his flight, but the invisible grip only tightened, slowing him, pulling him inexorably toward the waves. He looked down and saw it. His shadow, once a fleeting darkness on the water, was now held fast, captured by something in the depths. This was Samika, the shadow catcher, a monstrous rakshasi with a terrifying power to seize a creature's reflection and drag them to their doom. There was no fighting it from a distance. There was no clever trick. This was a primal test of raw courage. To break her hold, he would have to face her in her own element. Without hesitation, Hanuman allowed himself to be pulled down. He plunged into the dark waters, hurtling towards the source of the power. He found her there, a creature of nightmare, with a mouth like a cave in the seafloor, waiting to devour him. She was the embodiment of hidden dangers, of the unseen forces that seek to drag us down into despair. But Hanuman was a being of light, and he would not be extinguished by darkness. He allowed her to swallow him whole, plunging into the blackness of her gullet. But this was not surrender. This was strategy. Inside the beast, he expanded his form once more, but this time with devastating force. He grew and grew, his divine body like a star being born, until the demoness Samika, unable to contain the sheer power within her, burst apart from the inside out. He tore his way free, a golden warrior emerging from the slain heart of the ocean's darkest terror. He burst from the surface of the water, shaking the ocean from his fur, and launched himself back into the sky, now unopposed. The tests were over. He had proven his focus, his wit, and his courage. He had faced temptation, trickery, and terror, and had conquered them all, not for glory but for his Lord Rama. And then he saw it. On the horizon, a faint line. As he flew closer, the line resolved itself into a shore, a coastline of breathtaking beauty. He saw a lush, green island, dominated by a magnificent mountain Trikuta, upon which sat a city that seemed forged from gold and jewels. It was Lanka, a city of impossible architecture, with soaring towers that pierced the clouds and sprawling palaces that glittered in the sun. It was a fortress surrounded by high walls, deep moats, and patrolled by legions of fierce, terrifying Rakshasa warriors. It was beautiful, powerful, and utterly impregnable. Hanuman had crossed the impossible ocean. He had done what no one else could. But as he hovered in the air, cloaking himself in the clouds and shrinking his form to remain unseen, a cold, hard realization dawned. The leap was only the beginning. He was one being alone, looking down upon an entire island nation of powerful magical enemies. Finding one captive woman in this fortress of a city was a task far more daunting than crossing 100 oceans. The real test had just begun. He had made the impossible leap. But the leap was just the prelude. The real mission began now. Before him lay the city of Lanka, a golden fortress sprawling under the moonlight. It wasn't just a city, it was a statement, a monument to power, arrogance, and stolen glory. Its walls seemed to hum with dark energy, its towers clawing at the sky. This was the heart of Ravana's empire, the dragon's lair. Hanuman knew that his divine form, the one that had crossed the ocean, would be a beacon here. He needed to become a shadow, a whisper. So with a thought, he shrank himself down to the size of a common cat, a silent, furry phantom against the city's golden gleam. Stealth was now his greatest weapon. He moved towards the main gate, a colossal structure guarded by Rakshasas with eyes that missed nothing. But Hanuman wasn't planning on using the gate. He was a creature of the air, of the impossible path. He flowed over the wall like smoke, silent and unseen. He had breached the perimeter, but he quickly learned that Lanka had more than just physical walls. As he landed inside, a monstrous figure materialized before him, blocking his path. She was hideous, terrifying, and radiated an ancient, formidable power. This was no ordinary guard. This was Lankini, the very spirit and guardian of the city, a demigoddess bound to protect her home. She looked down at the tiny monkey form and sneered. "Who are you, little creature, to sneak into Ravana's city? Do you know who I am?" I am Lanka itself. Nothing enters here without my permission. Your life is forfeit." Hanuman in his small form looked up and replied calmly, "I am but a humble monkey curious to see this magnificent city. I meant no harm. I will look around and then I will leave." Lankini laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "Fool! No one who enters Lanka uninvited ever leaves." She raised a massive palm to swat him like a fly. But she had made a fatal miscalculation. She assumed his size was a measure of his strength. Hanuman didn't even grow. He simply met her strike with his left fist. The impact was like a thunderclap. A shockwave of force, utterly disproportionate to his size, slammed into the guardian. She staggered back, blood pouring from her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief. A cat-sized creature had just broken her, the guardian of Lanka, with a single casual blow. As the pain subsided, a strange clarity filled her eyes. She remembered an ancient prophecy, a prophecy from the creator god, Brahma himself. He had told her that the day a monkey defeated her with a single blow, it would signal the beginning of the end for the Rakshasas, the end of Lanka. She looked at Hanuman not with anger, but with a terrifying awe. "Go," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Go and complete your mission. The fate of this city is now sealed." She stepped aside, a living gate opening for the agent of destiny. The city's own immune system had just been compromised, recognizing a force it could not, and was not meant to stop. Hanuman, now free to move, began his search, and the sheer scale of his task began to crush him. Lanka was a labyrinth of unimaginable wealth and decadence. Every home was a mansion, every street paved with gold and jewels. He saw Rakshasas of every shape and size, feasting, drinking, celebrating their power. The air was thick with arrogance and dark magic. It was a city without fear, convinced of its own invincibility. How could he find one woman a prisoner in a place like this? A woman likely hidden away in its deepest, most secure location. He moved like a ghost from rooftop to rooftop, peering into every window, every courtyard. He searched barracks, stables, halls of justice, and pleasure gardens. He saw incredible things, magical beasts, powerful weapons, mountains of treasure. But he did not see Sita. His search inevitably led him to the heart of the fortress, Ravana's royal palace. This was a city within the city, a monument of ego so vast it defied belief. Hanuman slipped inside, his heart pounding. If she was anywhere, she would be here. He moved through corridors of polished obsidian, past guards who were living nightmares, through chambers filled with artifacts plundered from gods and kings. Finally, he came to Ravana's private chambers, his sleeping quarters. The air was heavy with the scent of exotic flowers and wine. Pushing open a door, he saw a sight that stopped him in his tracks. On a massive, ornate bed lay Ravana himself sleeping, and all around him on the floor, on cushions, on divans, were hundreds of women, his wives and concubines, queens and princesses from conquered kingdoms, all in deep slumber, their fine clothes disheveled, their jewelry catching the dim light. Hanuman's heart sank. He scanned the room, his eyes darting from face to face. He was looking for a woman defined by sorrow, her beauty dimmed by grief. But these women, even in sleep, seemed content. Then his eyes fell upon one, a woman of breathtaking beauty, sleeping peacefully on the main bed near Ravana. She was regal, her features perfect. For a heart-stopping moment, Hanuman thought, "This must be her. This is Sita." A wave of elation washed over him. He had found her. He had succeeded. He instinctively raised his hand to his chest, ready to present Rama's ring. But then he froze. Something was wrong. This woman wore the serene expression of a beloved queen, not the tormented look of a captive. There were no tear tracks on her face. This was Mandodari, Ravana's chief queen. This was not Sita. The elation crashed into despair. But it was immediately followed by a wave of shame. What was he doing? He, a celibate, a brahmachari, was standing in the dead of night, gazing upon the sleeping wives of another. He felt a deep sense of transgression. His pure mind recoiled. This was a violation, a sin. He wasn't just a soldier. He was a devotee, and his devotion demanded absolute purity of thought and action. He chastised himself. His mission was to find Sita, not to compromise his own dharma by looking upon women this way, even if it was by necessity. He turned and fled the room, his mind in turmoil. He had searched the entire palace, every room, every hall, every tower. He had seen the peak of Ravana's power, the heart of his kingdom, and Sita was not there. The moon was beginning to set. The first hints of dawn were on the horizon. His time was running out. He sat on the palace wall, looking out over the silent city, and a cold, heavy dread began to settle in his soul. He had failed. The thought was in poison. He had crossed the ocean. He had defeated the guardians. He had infiltrated the impenetrable city. And for what? To find nothing. To fail Rama. What would he even say? How could he go back to Kishkinda and tell Rama that he couldn't find her? The hope of the entire army rested on his shoulders, and he had buckled under the weight. The shame was unbearable. He imagined the look on Rama's face, the light of hope dying in his eyes. He imagined Sugriva and the others, their mission ending in failure because of him. He couldn't go back. He wouldn't. It would be better to die here, in this enemy city, than to return as the bearer of such devastating news. His mind spiraled into darkness. He contemplated simply giving up his life, letting his spirit depart his body. Or perhaps he should unleash his true form, destroy this entire city in a blaze of suicidal glory, and take Ravana with him to the underworld. He was Hanuman, the son of the wind god, the mighty hero. But in that moment he was just a lone agent thousands of miles from home. His mission in ruins, his heart broken. He had exhausted every possibility. He had searched every conceivable place. He had looked everywhere. The mission was over. All hope was lost. And as he sat there, shrouded in the deepest despair he had ever known, on the verge of surrendering to the void, his eyes drifted downwards from the palace wall. He saw something he had overlooked in his frantic top-down search. Tucked away, separate from the opulent, manicured gardens of the palace, was a secluded grove of Ashoka trees. It felt different from the rest of Lanka. It was a place of profound, quiet beauty, yet it seemed to be weeping, radiating an aura of palpable, suffocating sorrow. A beautiful prison. He hadn't searched there. It was the one place he had not yet looked. He moved towards it, a tiny, almost invisible form, a shadow among shadows. The garden was called the Ashoka Vathika, a grove of trees that were said to bloom without sorrow. But as Hanuman entered, he felt the name was a cruel joke. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and champaka flowers, a perfume so heavy it felt like a shroud. The trees were ancient and magnificent, their branches weaving a canopy against the moonlit sky. But they didn't feel alive. They felt like silent, grieving witnesses. Every leaf, every petal, seemed to be weeping a dew of silent tears. This wasn't a garden, it was a gilded cage, a masterpiece of natural artifice designed to mock the prisoner it held. He crept forward, his senses on fire. His heart, which had soared over an ocean, now felt like a leaden weight in his chest. He saw them first. The guards. But they weren't soldiers in armor. They were grotesque Rakshasas, female demons of horrifying form. Some had the heads of beasts, others had a single eye, some had twisted, misshapen limbs. They were scattered throughout the grove, some sleeping, some sharpening their claws, their low guttural laughter, a profane sound in this otherwise sacred-feeling space. And they were all positioned around a central point, like predators guarding a precious broken prize. Hanuman followed their gaze. He climbed a tall Shimshupa tree, concealing himself perfectly within its dense foliage, and looked down. And then he saw her. Beneath the tree, a woman sat on the bare earth. Her body was frail, emaciated from fasting and grief. Her sari, once the color of molten gold, was now soiled and worn. Her long black hair was matted into a single, unkempt braid. She was surrounded by all the beauty of nature, yet she seemed to be the epicenter of all the world's sorrow. She was like a lone lotus blooming in a pool of mud, a sliver of the moon obscured by dark, storming clouds. She radiated a light, a divine effulgence that even her grief and squalor could not extinguish. It was a light he recognized. It was the feminine counterpart to the divine fire that burned in Rama. His heart stopped. This had to be her. This was Sita. He watched, his entire being frozen. He saw her weeping silently, her tears falling onto the cold ground. He heard her whispering a single name, over and over again, a prayer, a lament, a lifeline. Rama, Rama, Rama. The sight was a physical blow. This was the beloved queen of Ayodhya, the daughter of the earth goddess. the woman for whom his lord was tearing the world apart. To see her like this, so helpless, so alone, surrounded by monsters, a rage began to build in Hanuman. It was a cold, pure fury, an ocean of power churning within his tiny form. He wanted to erupt, to grow to the size of a mountain and crush this entire island to dust. He wanted to obliterate the one responsible for this sacrilege, but he held back. His mission was not to destroy. Not yet. It was to find, to console, to report. A rash move would endanger her. He had to be patient. He had to be certain. He mentally recited the signs Rama had given him, the descriptions of her divine ornaments. But she wore none. They had been stripped from her. All she wore was her unwavering devotion to Rama, an ornament more brilliant than any jewel. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the garden shifted. The air grew heavy, charged with a malevolent energy. The Rakshasi guards, who had been lounging and jeering, scrambled to their feet, their faces a mask of fear and reverence. The ground itself seemed to tremble. From the shadows of his palace, a figure emerged, striding into the grove with an arrogance that seemed to bend the light around him. It was Ravana. He was magnificent and terrible. 10 heads, 20 arms, his skin the color of a dark storm cloud. He was adorned in celestial gold and jewels that blazed in the moonlight. He was the very picture of absolute power, of cosmic tyranny. And all of that power, all of that terrifying presence was focused on the small, grieving woman beneath the tree. Hanuman's knuckles turned white as he gripped the branch. His entire body tensed like a drawn bowstring. Ravana approached Sita, his voice a sickeningly smooth blend of charm and menace. He painted a picture of a glorious life. He offered her power, palaces of gold, thousands of servants. He offered to make her his chief queen, to place her above all others, to worship her beauty. He told her to forget her husband, Rama. A mere mortal, he sneered. A pathetic exile, wandering the forests like a beggar. What can he offer you? I am the Lord of the 3 worlds. I command gods and demons. Choose me, Sita, and all of this will be yours. Sita did not even look at him. She didn't flinch. She didn't respond. Her eyes remained fixed on the ground before her. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, she reached down and picked up a single blade of grass. She placed it on the ground between herself and the demon king. A fragile, insignificant barrier. But the message was thunderously clear. You are less than this blade of grass to me. You are not worthy of my direct gaze. Then she spoke. Her voice was quiet, but it carried the unshakable force of a mountain. It was filled not with fear, but with righteous fury and pity. Wretch, she said, her voice cutting through his arrogance. You speak of my husband Rama, the embodiment of Dharma, a lion among men, and you compare him to yourself, a cowardly jackal who had to steal me away in his absence? You are a moth flying into the fire of his wrath. You and your entire kingdom of Lanka are already doomed. Your power, your wealth, your armies, they are nothing. They are dust. Turn back now, return me to my lord with honor, and you might save yourself. If not, his arrows will seek you out, and not a single demon will be left on this island to mourn your passing. Ravana's face, all 10 of them, contorted in a mask of pure rage. His ego, as vast as the cosmos, had been shattered by a grieving woman and a blade of grass. The charm vanished, replaced by raw, unrestrained fury. He roared, a sound that shook the trees, and drew his massive, gleaming sword, the legendary Chandrahasa. You dare, he bellowed, raising the sword high above his head. I have offered you glory, and you answer with insults. I will end your miserable life right now. Hanuman's heart leaped. He was about to spring, mission be damned. He would not allow this. But just as Ravana was about to strike, one of his queens, Mandodari, who had followed him, rushed forward and caught his arm. She pleaded with him, reminding him of a powerful curse laid upon him long ago, that if he ever forced himself upon an unwilling woman, all 10 of his heads would shatter into 1,000 pieces. His lust for power was only exceeded by his fear of death. Breathing heavily, his eyes burning with hate, Ravana lowered his sword. He pointed a trembling finger at Sita. You have 2 months, he snarled. 2 months to come to your senses and enter my bed. If you refuse at the end of that time, my cooks will have you for my morning meal. He turned and stormed away, his rage poisoning the very air he left behind. The moment he was gone, the Rakshasi guards, eager to win their master's favor, closed in on Sita. They began their own torment, a cruel psychological assault. They taunted her, jeered at her, threatened her with vile tortures. They poked at her with their weapons, they danced around her, their monstrous forms twisting in the moonlight, trying to break her spirit with fear and despair. Up in the tree, Hanuman watched. He was a silent, hidden storm. Every fiber of his being screamed for vengeance. Every instinct told him to reveal himself and unleash a divine apocalypse upon these foul creatures. He could end Sita's suffering in an instant. He could rescue her right now and carry her back to Rama. But his mind, a mind as sharp as his power was vast, held him in check. Was that the right move? If he acted now, what would happen? He might succeed, but he might also fail. He was one being against an entire island of powerful demons. If he were captured or killed, Rama would never know where Sita was. All hope would be lost. His mission was to deliver a message of hope, not to start a war single-handedly. A premature attack could be a catastrophic failure, a betrayal of the trust Rama had placed in him. He was caught in an agony of indecision. The son of the wind god, a being of limitless action, was forced into utter stillness. He watched the woman his master loved more than life itself being tormented, and he could do nothing. Not yet. He had to think. He had to be more than just strong. He had to be wise. He had to wait for the perfect moment, the perfect strategy. And so he remained hidden, a coiled spring of divine power, a silent witness to the depths of evil, his heart breaking for Sita, his mind racing, searching for a way. He moved like a whisper through the golden city, a phantom in the moonlight, no bigger than a cat, scurrying over rooftops inlaid with sapphire and pearl. Lanka was a marvel of architecture, and a monument to stolen glory. Every opulent palace, every fragrant garden, was a testament to Ravana's power. Hanuman saw wonders that would make a god pause, but his heart felt nothing but a cold, driving urgency. He searched every hall, every chamber. He saw demons of every shape and size, feasting, laughing, sleeping. He even slipped into Ravana's private chambers, a place of breathtaking luxury. There, on a magnificent bed, lay a woman of incredible beauty, adorned with jewels. For a gut-wrenching moment, Hanuman's heart leaped. Was it her? Was this Sita? But he quickly realized his mistake. This woman slept soundly, peacefully. The Sita of his heart, the consort of Rama, could never find such rest in this prison. A wave of despair washed over him. He had searched the entire city, this fortress of evil, and she was nowhere to be found. Had Ravana? Had he ended her life? Was this whole mission a failure? Just as this dark thought began to take root, he noticed a small, secluded grove on the palace grounds, separate from everything else. The Ashokavathika, a garden of unparalleled beauty, filled with trees that bloomed year-round, felt different, a pocket of sorrow in a city of arrogance. Drawn by an unseen force, Hanuman leaped into the branches of a tall, dense tree and looked down. And there he saw her. She was sitting beneath a tree, a lone figure of heartbreaking grace. She was thin, her face pale with grief, her clothes simple and worn. But even in this state, she radiated a light, a purity that outshone all the stolen jewels of Lanka. Her eyes were fixed on the ground, and tears flowed from them like a silent, endless river. This was Sita, the queen of Ayodhya, the beloved of Rama, reduced to a prisoner in a garden. Hanuman's heart shattered. The divine son of the wind god, who could move mountains and swallow the sun, felt a rage so pure and so potent it threatened to burn him from the inside out. He wanted to erupt from the tree, to grow to his colossal form and smash this entire island kingdom into the sea. But he restrained himself. For her. As he watched, a dreadful procession entered the garden. At its head was Ravana, the 10-headed king of demons. He was magnificent and terrible, his every step exuding an aura of absolute power and pride. He approached Sita, his many faces attempting to smile, to cajole. He offered her everything. He offered her his queenship, power over all his lands, jewels that would make the stars themselves seem dim. He painted a picture of a life of unparalleled luxury if she would only accept him. Sita didn't even look at him. She placed a single blade of grass between them, a humble, powerful symbol. She would not even address him directly. He was lower than the dirt beneath this blade of grass. Through it she spoke, her voice quiet but filled with the strength of 1,000 suns. She told him of Rama. She spoke of his nobility, his power, his love. She told Ravana that he was nothing but a common thief, a coward who had to use trickery to steal her away. She warned him that Rama's arrows would soon find him, and that his glorious city and all his kin would be reduced to ash for this one unforgivable sin. Ravana's face contorted with rage. His mask of charm fell away, revealing the monster beneath. He drew his massive sword, its edge gleaming in the moonlight, and roared that if she did not accept him within 2 months, his chefs would prepare her for his morning meal. The demonesses guarding her shrieked in cruel delight, but Sita did not flinch. She looked at him, her eyes filled not with fear, but with a profound pity for his ignorance. Defeated by her unshakable will, Ravana stormed away, ordering the guards to break her spirit by any means necessary. The demonesses closed in, taunting her, whispering vile threats, morphing into hideous shapes to terrorize her. But Sita closed her eyes, her mind fixed solely on Rama. Eventually, the guards grew bored and wandered off, leaving her utterly alone in her despair. This was her lowest point. She looked at the branches of the tree above, her mind turning to the darkest of possibilities. She could not bear this life any longer. If Rama didn't come soon, she would have to end it herself. From his hidden perch in that very tree, Hanuman saw her resolve waver. He knew he had to act now, but how? If he appeared suddenly, this giant monkey man, she would be terrified. She might scream, alerting the guards, or worse, the shock might be too much for her fragile heart. He had to be delicate. He had to be wise. So he began to speak, not to her, but as if to himself. In a soft, clear voice he began to tell a story. The story of a great king named Dashratha, of his noble son Rama, who was an incarnation of Vishnu, born to uphold Dharma. He spoke of Rama's marriage to the divine Sita, a woman of unparalleled virtue and beauty. He spoke of their exile, of their love, of the golden deer, and of the treacherous abduction by the demon king Ravana. Sita's head snapped up. Who was speaking? Where was this voice coming from? Was it a dream? Another cruel trick of the demons? She scanned the garden, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and terror. Hanuman, seeing her confusion, let a small object fall from the tree. It landed softly on the ground near her. It was a ring, a golden ring intricately carved with the name Rama inscribed upon it. Her breath caught in her throat. She knew this ring. It was the one she had given him. It was his signet ring. Tears of joy and relief streamed down her face as she clutched it to her chest. It was real. He hadn't forgotten. He was looking for her. Hope, which had nearly been extinguished, now blazed up within her like a bonfire. Hanuman then floated down from the tree, still in his small, unassuming form. He bowed low, his hands folded in reverence. He introduced himself as Hanuman, a humble servant and messenger of Lord Rama. He told her of Rama's grief, how he hadn't slept or eaten properly since she was taken. He described the alliance with the monkey king Sugriva, the massive army they had gathered, and how he, Hanuman, had crossed the vast ocean on the strength of his devotion to find her. Sita listened, her entire being absorbing every word. For the first time in months she was not alone. She finally had news of her beloved. The relief was so overwhelming it was almost painful. She then gave Hanuman her side of the story, and as proof that he had truly found her, she took a precious jewel, her chudamani, from her hair and gave it to him to take back to Rama. Seeing her suffering and filled with the power of his Lord's mission, Hanuman's devotion overflowed into a bold offer. He knelt before her and began to grow, his form expanding to that of a mountain, his golden fur glowing with divine energy. He told her to climb upon his back. He would carry her away from this dreadful place right now. He would leap across the ocean in a single bound, crush any demon who stood in their way, and reunite her with Rama by sunrise. It was a tempting offer, a path to immediate freedom. But Sita, in her infinite wisdom, gently refused. She explained that this was more than just her rescue. It was about justice. It was about Dharma, the sacred law of the cosmos. As a warrior, as a king, and as her husband, it was Rama's duty and his honor to face Ravana in battle, to defeat him and his armies, and to reclaim her himself. For her to be stolen away in secret would be another act of stealth, not a victory of righteousness over evil. The world needed to see evil punished, not simply evaded. Rama must be the one to strike the final blow, to restore the balance. Hanuman bowed his head, humbled by her wisdom and her profound understanding of cosmic duty. She was right. He accepted her decision, but his work was not yet done. He had found Sita. He had delivered the message. Now for the second part of his mission, to assess the enemy's strength. And more than that, he felt a burning need to deliver a message of his own. A message not of hope but of warning. A preview of the destruction that was coming for Ravana. He couldn't leave Lanka quietly. He had to make them feel the first tremor of Rama's wrath. He turned his gaze from the gentle Sita towards the arrogant, glittering city, and a warrior's smile touched his lips. It was time to announce his arrival. He started with the garden itself, the Ashokavathika, a place of breathtaking beauty that Ravana had twisted into a cage. Every fragrant flower, every ancient tree was a bar in Sita's golden prison. So Hanuman decided to dismantle the prison piece by piece. He wasn't just breaking branches, he was breaking the illusion of Ravana's power. He uprooted trees that had stood for centuries, their roots screaming as they were torn from the earth. He crushed pavilions of pearl and ivory, turning symbols of luxury into piles of dust. It was a symphony of destruction, a carefully composed message written in the language of chaos. This wasn't mindless rage. Every shattered pillar, every toppled statue was a word, and the sentence he was writing was simple. You took what belongs to Rama. Now Rama's servant has come to take from you. The noise, a grinding, tearing, thunderous roar, finally reached the palace guards. The Rakshasas, the demon warriors of Lanka, came running, their eyes wide with disbelief. Their pristine, perfect garden, the pride of their king, was being systematically demolished by a single colossal monkey. They charged, a wave of steel and fury, only to break against a rock of divine strength. Hanuman moved like a storm. He grabbed an iron pillar from a ruined gate, and it became an extension of his arm. He swept through their ranks, not with the malice of a killer, but with the detached efficiency of a force of nature. He was a hurricane, a wildfire, an earthquake, all rolled into one. The demons who had terrorized the three worlds were swatted away like insects. News of the devastation reached Ravana's court. A single monkey was laying waste to the Ashoka Grove and had defeated his elite guard? Impossible. It was an insult. Ravana, his pride stung, dispatched one of his best commanders, Jambumalai. He arrived on a chariot pulled by monstrous beasts, armed with celestial weapons. But against Hanuman, weapons were toys and chariots were kindling. Hanuman leaped onto the chariot, shattered it with a single blow, and in the ensuing chaos, the commander met a swift and decisive end. The reports grew more frantic. Ravana's fury grew darker. He sent the 7 sons of his most powerful minister, each a celebrated warrior in his own right. They surrounded Hanuman, a circle of deadly intent. They thought they had him trapped. They didn't understand. They weren't trapping him. They were just gathering in one place to make his job easier. Hanuman grew in size, his roar shaking the very foundations of Lanka. He dispatched all 7 of them before they could even coordinate their attack. Now Ravana was truly alarmed. This was no ordinary creature. This was a power he had not accounted for. The casual arrogance on his 10 faces began to curdle into genuine concern. He turned to his son, the young, brave, and powerful Akshaya Kumara. The boy, eager to prove his worth, begged to be sent. Ravana, with a heavy heart, agreed. Akshaya arrived in a gleaming celestial chariot, a prodigy of war, raining down arrows that could pierce mountains. Hanuman saw the youth in his opponent. He saw the fire, the pride. For a moment he felt a pang of something akin to pity. But this was war. This was a message. And the message had to be delivered in a way Ravana could not ignore. The battle was fierce, a dazzling display of power and speed. But Akshaya, for all his skill, was a candle fighting the sun. Hanuman caught the prince's chariot midair, crushed it in his hands, and with a heavy heart but an unwavering sense of duty, he ended the life of Ravana's son. The news hit the court like a physical blow. Akshaya was dead, the king's own son. The disbelief turned to shock, the shock to a terrifying, silent rage that filled the grand hall. The game was over. This was no longer a pest to be exterminated. This was a declaration of war delivered directly to the heart of the empire. One name was now whispered in the court, the only one who could possibly face this kind of power. Indrajit, Ravana's eldest son, his pride, his ultimate weapon. a warrior so mighty he had defeated Indra himself, the king of the gods, and dragged him back to Lanka in chains. He was a master of illusion, a wielder of celestial weapons so powerful they could end creation. He was known as Meghanada, the roar of the clouds, but the universe knew him as Indrajit, the conqueror of Indra. He stepped forward, his eyes burning with cold fire. He didn't boast. He didn't threaten. He simply said, "I will go." The air in Lanka crackled as Indrajit took to the sky in his chariot, which could appear and disappear at will. He saw the devastation below, the body of his younger brother, and his resolve hardened into diamond. He found Hanuman atop the main gate of the city, waiting for him, as if he knew this confrontation was inevitable. The battle that followed was unlike any other. It was a clash of titans, a fight that shook the heavens. Indrajit was a phantom, disappearing and reappearing, launching weapons from impossible angles. Arrows of fire, lances of lightning, nets of pure energy. Hanuman was a mountain, immovable, unstoppable. He met every attack head-on, catching arrows in mid-flight, roaring a challenge that shattered Indrajit's illusions. He was stronger. He was faster. And Indrajit, the conqueror of the gods, knew it. He was being pushed back. He was being overwhelmed, frustrated, enraged, and for the first time in a long time, facing a superior foe, Indrajit reached for his final resort. The ultimate weapon gifted to him by Lord Rama, the creator himself, the Brahmastra. This was not a normal weapon. It was the embodiment of divine cosmic power. It was infallible, unstoppable. It could not be defeated. Its purpose was to completely neutralize any target, binding it in inescapable celestial energy. As Indrajit prepared to launch it, Hanuman recognized it. He knew what it was, and he knew he had a choice. He could have easily dodged it. He could have used his own powers to escape its path. But in that split second, a brilliant, audacious plan formed in his mind. He had delivered the message of Rama's power. Now he needed to deliver the message of Rama's righteousness. He needed to stand before Ravana himself. He needed to see the enemy up close to gauge his strength, his arrogance, his weakness. Getting captured wasn't a defeat. It was the next stage of the mission. And so, out of deep respect for Lord Rama, the creator whose power was infused in the weapon, Hanuman did the unthinkable. He stood still. He allowed the Brahmastra to hit him. The celestial energy wrapped around him, binding his limbs, suppressing his immense power. He fell from the gate, crashing to the ground, bound and helpless. The Rakshasa soldiers who had been watching in terror erupted in cheers. They swarmed him, adding their own crude ropes and chains over the divine bonds of the Brahmastra, a pointless act of vanity. Indrajit descended, a triumphant smirk on his face, believing he had done what no one else could. He had captured the great monkey. They dragged Hanuman through the streets of Lanka. The citizens poured out of their homes to jeer and throw stones. They saw a defeated enemy, a captured beast being paraded for their amusement. They didn't understand what they were really seeing. They weren't looking at a prisoner. They were looking at a Trojan horse, a willing captive who had allowed himself to be caught, just so he could be brought inside the very throne room of the king. Hanuman remained silent, his face calm, his eyes taking in every detail of the city, every soldier, every defense. His mission was far from over. In fact, the most important part was just beginning. He was dragged up the steps of the grand palace, through doors of solid gold, and into the most opulent, intimidating throne room in all of creation. And there, seated upon a massive, glittering throne, surrounded by his court of demons and monsters, was the 10-headed king himself, Ravana. The two adversaries, the servant of God and the king of hubris, finally laid eyes on each other. The messenger was about to meet the king. Ravana's 20 eyes, burning like coals in his 10 monstrous heads, narrowed as they fixed upon the small monkey before him. The air in the throne room grew thick, heavy with the weight of a tyrant's ego. Around him, his court of demons and warriors shifted, their grotesque faces a mixture of curiosity and contempt. This was the creature who had single-handedly destroyed the sacred grove and killed some of their finest soldiers? Seemed impossible. Ravana's voice, a sound like grinding stones, echoed through the chamber. "Who are you? And what gives you the audacity to enter my city, lay waste to my gardens and kill my people?" Hanuman, standing small but radiating an unshakable calm, bowed his head slightly. not in fear but in the formal respect due to a king, even a wicked one. I am Hanuman, a humble servant and messenger of the great Prince Rama of Ayodhya. The name Rama struck the court like a whip. A murmur ran through the demons. Ravana's main face, the one in the center, twisted into a sneer. Rama? The pathetic human who wanders the forest because he was cast out of his own kingdom? And he sends a monkey as his messenger. Laughter, coarse and cruel, filled the hall. Hanuman's expression didn't change. His focus was absolute. The same Rama whose divine wife, the noble Sita, you have abducted and now hold captive against her will. I am here on his behalf to deliver a message. Return her with the honor she is due, and seek his forgiveness. If you do not, Prince Rama will come here himself, and his wrath will be the end of you and your entire kingdom. The laughter died instantly. The threat, delivered so plainly, so devoid of arrogance, hung in the air. Ravana's pride was a fragile, monstrous thing. To be lectured by a monkey, to be threatened by an exiled prince, it was more than he could bear. His rage was a physical force, a wave of heat that washed over the court. You dare! He roared, his 10 heads roaring in unison, a terrifying chorus of fury. You dare threaten me, Ravana, the conqueror of the 3 worlds, in my own throne room? For your insolence you will die. He raised his hand, ready to strike Hanuman down. But his wisest advisor, his own brother Vibhishana, stepped forward. My king, you cannot. The ancient laws are clear. You must not kill a messenger, no matter how insulting his message. It is beneath the dignity of a king. Ravana paused, his rage simmering. The advisor was right. To kill a messenger was a sign of weakness, of fear. But his pride demanded satisfaction. His eyes fell on Hanuman's long, powerful tail, which lay coiled on the floor behind him. A malicious smile spread across his faces. You are right, Ravana said, his voice dripping with venom. I will not kill him, but he must be punished. A monkey's pride is in his tail. We will set it on fire. Let him return to his master, scarred and humiliated, a walking testament to the folly of challenging the king of Lanka. His demon guard seized Hanuman, who offered no resistance. They began wrapping his tail in oil-soaked rags, layer after layer, until it was as thick as a pillar. Hanuman remained still, a strange, knowing look in his eyes. As they brought the torch, he did something unexpected. He began to grow. His body expanded, his muscles swelling, and his tail lengthened, stretching on and on, demanding more and more cloth, more and more oil. The demons, laughing at first, soon grew tired, using every last rag and drop of oil in the palace to cover the immense tail. Finally, Ravana gave the order. They lit the torch. A massive flame erupted from Hanuman's tail. The court roared with laughter and triumph. But Hanuman wasn't screaming. He was smiling. In one explosive movement, he shattered his bonds. He shrank back to a smaller, more nimble size, but the fire on his tail still raged. With a deafening cry of victory to Rama, he leaped into the air. He was a comet of divine retribution. He jumped from the throne room to the palace roof, the massive flame trailing behind him like a fiery whip. He leaped from building to building, from tower to tower. Everywhere his tail touched, the golden city of Lanka, built on a foundation of arrogance and sin, caught fire. Palaces made of gold and ivory melted. Ornate tapestries turned to ash. The screams of his captors replaced their laughter. Hanuman moved with incredible speed, a blur of fur and fire, ensuring not a single bastion of Ravana's power was left untouched. He had turned their punishment into their destruction. He had become a living torch, cleansing the city with a holy fire fueled by a demon king's own arrogance. With the city engulfed in flames, his work was done. He flew to the edge of the island and dipped his tail into the cool waters of the ocean, extinguishing the blaze. He took one last look at the burning capital, a grim promise of what was to come for its king. Then he leaped. He flew back across the ocean, his heart soaring, carrying the news that would launch the greatest war of the age. He landed back on the southern shore of India to a joyous reunion. He recounted his entire story, finding Sita, his confrontation with Ravana, the burning of Lanka. He delivered Sita's jewel to Rama, a tangible piece of hope in a desperate time. Rama, his eyes filled with tears of gratitude and resolve, embraced Hanuman. In that moment, the bond between God and devotee was sealed for eternity. Now they had a target. But an entire ocean stood between their army and Ravana's fortress. So they began to build a bridge. An army of monkeys and bears, with Hanuman at the forefront, worked tirelessly, carrying massive boulders and chanting Rama's name. They constructed a floating bridge across the ocean, a miracle of engineering born from pure devotion, a testament to the idea that with faith, no obstacle is insurmountable. The army crossed into Lanka, and the Great War began. The fighting was brutal, a clash of divine weapons and demonic magic. And through it all, Hanuman was a force of nature. He was a warrior, a general, a protector. He tore through the demon ranks, a whirlwind of unstoppable power, his mace crushing anyone who stood against Rama's cause. But the war's most critical moment, Hanuman's single greatest test, was yet to come. In a fierce battle, Ravana's son, Indrajit, struck Rama's brother, Lakshmana, with a celestial weapon. Lakshmana fell, mortally wounded, hovering on the brink of death. The army's physician announced that only one thing could save him: the mythical Sanjeevani herb, a plant that glowed in the dark and grew on a specific peak in the distant Himalayan mountains. And it had to be brought back before the next sunrise. The task was impossible for anyone else, but not for Hanuman. Without a moment's hesitation, he took a mighty leap, flying north across the entire subcontinent of India, faster than the wind itself. He reached the mountain range just as darkness fell. But as he searched the slopes, he found a problem. The entire mountain was covered in glowing herbs. He couldn't tell which one was the Sanjeevani. Time was running out. The sun would be rising soon. Faced with an impossible choice, Hanuman did the unthinkable. He didn't just pick an herb. He didn't waste another second trying to identify it. He wrapped his arms around the base of the entire mountain peak. He strained, his muscles bulging, channeling every ounce of his devotion to Rama into this one act. With a ground-shattering roar, he lifted the entire mountain and flew back south, carrying it in one hand. He arrived back at the battlefield just as the first light of dawn was breaking the horizon. The entire army, human and animal alike, stared in stunned silence at the sight of a monkey carrying a mountain. The physician quickly found the herb, administered it, and Lakshmana's life was saved. Hanuman had done it. He had achieved the impossible, not through ego, but through a love so powerful it could literally move mountains. The war culminated in a final epic duel. Rama defeated Ravana, ending his reign of terror and fulfilling the purpose of his incarnation. Sita was rescued, her purity proven, and the victorious army prepared to return home. After their long exile, Rama was crowned king of Ayodhya. In the grand celebration, he honored and rewarded everyone who had helped him. When it was Hanuman's turn, Rama looked at him with infinite love and said, "Hanuman, I can never repay what you have done. It is a debt that can never be settled. Ask for anything you desire. Riches, power, a kingdom of your own. It is yours." Hanuman fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. He looked up at Rama and spoke the words that would define his legacy forever. "My lord," he said, "I desire no wealth, no power, no liberation from this world. I ask for only one thing. Grant me this boon, that as long as your story is told and your name is chanted on this earth, I may remain here unseen to listen. That is my only heaven." And so it was granted. Hanuman became immortal, not to rule but to serve, to listen. He is the ultimate symbol of devotion, the perfect servant who finds his everything in his connection to the divine. His story isn't just about a monkey with superpowers. It's a story about us. It's about the untapped potential that lies within every single person. Hanuman's strength didn't come from his muscles. It came from his purpose. His courage didn't come from a lack of fear. It came from a love that was greater than any fear. He teaches us that humility is not weakness, but the foundation of true strength. He shows us that the greatest obstacles aren't the oceans we have to cross or the mountains we have to move, but the doubts we have within ourselves. The story of Hanuman is a reminder that with a focused mind and a selfless heart, dedicated to a cause greater than oneself, there is nothing, absolutely nothing, that is impossible.